All right. Well, shalom to everybody who might come along. We are on a journey to somewhere, and that somewhere is becoming more and more amazing every day. Uh, Not at all where I thought we would end up or where we were supposed to end up, but certainly it is a good place to be. So, welcome to each and every one of you. I hope that you're doing well. I hope that you're experiencing all that the universe has for you, and if you're not, then I hope that you're recognizing that so that we can begin to move towards that. Each and every one of us has many things in our lives that we, as they become exposed to us, that we will then have to make a decision about. And it's quite clear, or becoming quite clear, that everyone has a decision to make. The only question, inevitably, for each of us is, which decision will you make? And so I heard a comment, and it really shocked me. The comment had to do, it was along the lines of, how many times do we have to come back? And the statement was that many people have been here many times, and many people will be here many more times. So I think that there may be a piece of this whole picture that it then becomes once again, as I'm always saying, it becomes something that we control that. And that's what I think you'll see that there's a piece of that anyways, a minute piece, that freedom and truth give you the opportunity to not control everybody else, not to control everything else. It gives you an opportunity to control, to have a systematic, intentional controlling of your life. And so I don't know how you feel about it. Maybe you feel like you are controlling it, but I think if you would begin to look at it maybe in a different perspective, you might see that the controlling I'm talking about may not be what you think it is. And so we've been looking at, they walked with Jesus, seen some really profound things. I don't know how many of you, saw last week as being huge, but I felt like it was really huge. I said it, and I'm going to say it again, for all the whole cycle and gamut that I've been over 30 years, he's not Jesus, but this one that's called Jesus, Yeshua, should be proper. Man, I love that guy a lot, and I understand why, because it's actually a picture of who we are all supposed to be. And so the title of the book that we've been reading is They Walked with Jesus. Most of you that'll probably come by have been here. It really is quite amazing, and so we have a very amazing, we're going to finish out this chapter, I hope, tonight. And there's some really pretty stuff in here. I just want to set you up for that. So let's come to our heart center, and then let's simply humble ourselves before each other under the mighty hand of God. And we say, Namaste. Namaste to you. So we're going to pick up where we left off last week, but last week was big. I think this week might be bigger. And so we pick up with Abigail responding. Let me go back one page and read Dolores's last statement. And so Dolores asked Abigail, do you go with him on that visit too? You remember they're in a town. Abigail is the young girl, 13 and a half, 14 years old. She's struggling with knowing that an intuition that she has a calling, she has a purpose. The picture is being washed away in some ways, not that there weren't any separations or differences between male and female, but the picture prior to Judaism, it wasn't the same picture that we have seen or been told by Christianity. And So she feels like she's led to follow her uncle, who happens to be Yeshua. And so Abigail responds, "Yes, we went. Oh, this is very sad." Remember, they're in a leper colony. We don't know much about leper colonies. Gives a different picture than a lot of pictures I've seen, in that these people lived in a small town away from everybody, and it wasn't maybe exactly like we might perceive it, but it still was a place that they had some kind of community together anyway. And so she says, "Yes, we went. Oh, this is very sad. The next building we went into housed children who were without family or parents in this leper colony." I don't think that I've quite, when I read that, I had never really quite put a picture of children with leprosy. And then there's a piece of this that also goes with, or the children of parents with leprosy. And so she says, "You see, not all of these children appear sick. You can't tell that they have the disease. I guess you could develop this disease in various stages or at different ages. So some of them are so perfect looking, and then some of them are so eaten away," in a deep sigh. "But this is the house of the children in this leper colony." And Dolores asks, she says, "They live in that house together, the ones that have no parents?" And Abigail responds, "Yes, this is a nurse or nurse caretaker that stays with them all the time, and there are other helpers or attendants that come in during the day." And so Dolores asks her, what does he do there? Talking he being Yeshua. And she says, "He goes to each child and either talks to them or he always touches. I see him touching the face and smiling lovingly and then placing his hands on them, but he takes time to talk to each of them." And so I hope you do. I get a moving in my spirit when I hear that, of exactly what I've always perceived that Yeshua must have been like, which was he was someone who carried love and compassion with him. And here we have him at the worst of the worst, lepers. And yet he goes in and he touches them and he shows them loving kindness and he talks to them. And wow, I can't imagine how much healing, although he was a human just like we are, how we could have the same profound effect. And you'll see as we go through here. There's also some pictures that I was brainwashed and washed and steeped in the teachings of the New Testament, as far as supernatural miracles and the miracles that Yeshua did and all of those things. And you get a lot different picture here. And so Dolores asks, what does he do there at this colony in the children's house? And she says he goes to each child and he either talks to them or he always touches. I see him touching the face and smiling lovingly and then placing his hands on them, but he takes time to talk to each of them. Wow. You know, we oftentimes get so absorbed in ourselves that we don't take time, and that's not a statement against anybody. That's a statement against all of us at some levels. We get so preoccupied with our wants, needs, and desires that we forget that the other people exist in the world with us. And so Yeshua didn't do that. He saw the love and the compassion. He saw what it meant when you take just a few minutes to affect somebody. And so Abigail says, oh, there's a little girl sitting in a corner. And he asked her name, and smiling broadly, she got upon his lap, and she asked him if she will be well or will she die. And he tells her that she will be well and that she will grow up and help to take care of the children, and that she must have a pure heart. And this is a message for us, friends. that she must have a pure heart, a loving heart, and not despair, because she is where God needs her. And so I think for each and every one of us, as hopefully as we continue, and I hope that you are, I know I certainly am trying as fast as I can to bleed the Christian belief out of me. But we see here, he comes into a leper city, he brings compassion and love and kindness, but he's talking to a girl who has leprosy, and unless she's supernaturally healed, she has no hope of ever going back. And I would like for you, if you would peruse with your mind, to grab a hold of this. He doesn't offer her supernatural healing. He actually tells her, in spite, you almost get the feeling that he actually just kind of like pushes the disease out of the way. Why? Because all of us are on a path or on a journey. When we reach a place of enlightenment, a place, and I believe the true place of enlightenment, dear friend, is when we, if you maybe want to think about it, it's changed from a lot of the spirituality stuff to it. My belief system is morphing into a kind of a little different thing. I see all of a sudden about my thoughts and my understandings. But we really haven't had the proper picture about life. We didn't have it given to us when we came in. We didn't have it given to us after we came in by our parents and by society. But everything that we encounter on this life, we encounter it, and it's only by lack of will in our incarnation. Prior to our incarnation, all of the decisions that were made with the collective soul were made as to what it was that I needed to accomplish in this incarnation. Okay? That I needed to accomplish. There are needs as a light source that I have, just as you all have needs in your light source, the true you. And it's so difficult because I think many people sometimes are struggling with that. Our flesh and who our mind and who we think we are is really not us. And until you begin to get a little greater grasp of that, sometimes maybe it'll cause you to have glitches and stuff where you get tripped up. And I know that that's not what the Creator wants from us. He wants us to walk in peace, and He wants us to walk with purpose. All of us came in, we made a conscious decision to come into this life. And I know that it may be hard for some of you, but we made a conscious decision, had discussions in the conscious soul before we came into a human body about why we wanted the parents that we wanted. And I have to tell you, I've spent some time, contemplating that. And initially I was finding it really difficult to believe that. But I don't find it so difficult now that I'm beginning to understand that all of us came in for a purpose. And because we don't know that, because our memories were lost and we've been far away from the source spiritually, we don't understand really that the bad things are just as known as the good things are. Do we love good things? Yes. Can there be positive that comes out of good things? Yes. But the learning place for a human is in the middle of adversity. That's where we learn. Remember, we're only playing a game called being a human. So everything that in the manner in which most people view themselves and the world, it actually really is a lot closer to the picture of being in the Matrix. You're in the Matrix. You're playing a game. And we're here, and we have a purpose. And if you will allow yourself to begin to meditate and to contemplate on the fact that I have a purpose, and then usually when people begin that, the next question that they ask is, what is my purpose? And we actually come in with multiple purposes, but there are a few purposes that come in with all humans, and we all have those same purposes. Now, we may need to be in a certain place for a certain thing, but we all have a purpose of coming into a human because we need to learn more compassion. We need to learn what true love is. Maybe you need to learn how to love yourself so that you can then fulfill the scripture which says you must love your neighbor. And so I love the whole tenderness of Yeshua. He comes in, he's not worried about anything. He has a purpose. He says, can you hear what he's saying? That's what Dolores asked Abigail. And Abigail says, oh, there's a little girl sitting in a corner, and he asked her name, and then she smiles broadly. She got up on his lap, and she asked him if she will be well or will she die. I think all of us have asked similar questions to that. And he tells her that she will be well. And I can tell you today, I don't care where you're at. I don't care whether you have sickness. I don't care if you have pain in your body. I don't care if you're the perfect specimen, but you have psychological problems. Friends, this is just a very brief time, and you're going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Whatever you're going through, it's going to be okay. Learn what you need to learn while you're here and take full advantage of what comes into your life. The things that you need, you've already discussed them. And it began to take the fog and the cloud away when I began to see this working in my life. That the things that I need are going to come to me. And if I walk as Yeshua tells this one, you must keep your heart pure. That's across the board, friends. And I suspect that there are pictures and ways that you can have an impure heart, but you're not going to find the fullness of what you're looking for. And I don't care how many times I come in, I just want to learn something and leave wiser than I came in. And if I do that, eventually I will get to the place, I believe, to where I don't come in, or when I come in, it'll be in a different position. And so she says, this little girl sits on his lap and she's worried. She's concerned. She lives in a leper colony. She's around dead people who have parts that are falling off, and some of them have leprosy, or according to the rabbis have leprosy, and yet they appear to be perfectly normal. You remember, if they saw a scab on you that didn't look right, the rabbis would cast you out as being leprous. If they saw mold in a house, they would cast you out of the house, and the house called leper. And so he says that she will grow up and help take care of the children. See, no promise of healing. He just tells her, sweetie, it's going to be okay, but you got to keep yourself pure no matter what you're going through. If there is a takeaway today, there's many of them, I hope you get them. But if there is a takeaway today, that's that picture right there, that paradigm that he is telling this little girl in a leper colony. Folks, if you want to find something to radicalize and revolutionize your mind and your body and your life and your manifestation, grab a hold of what he's sowing to this little girl. It is the seeds to the kingdom. And he says that you will grow up and help take care of the children, and that she must have a pure heart and a loving heart, and she must not despair. So those are three things that you could put into your affirmations of speaking over yourself. I will have a true heart, and I will have a loving heart, and I will not despair when it looks like everything is lost. What a powerful threesome. And because she is where God needs her, folks, everything about your coming in was approved and was gone over line by line, thought by thought, with your soul counsel on the other side. A council of souls. You are a soul. You are part of the council of souls. You are not a human over there talking to spirits. You are a source of light. You are a soul. And so our souls are actually the light. And that God needs you. Each one of you have something in your life that you need to learn to conquer. It's holding you back maybe in the spirit realm. It's holding you back as maybe it's the brightness of your light isn't as bright as what it could be because you have this thing. And the only way that we can get rid of that thing is to learn how to conquer that in human form. For whatever reason, I don't know why that this is the way things work. But all through the Bible, we hear vestiges of this. We were just given an interpretation that's totally erroneous. And we must not despair because she is where God needs her. I think oftentimes we focus on trying to go somewhere else instead of recognizing that right here where I am today is where God needs me. You know what? When God doesn't need me here anymore, I bet he's more than capable of moving me somewhere else. I've had him open doors and move me totally from state to state. And I promise you that the blessing that has come out of being here is greater than the blessing in Austin, and the greater in Austin was greater than any blessing I had experienced before. So are we really going to trust him and not despair? Maybe he puts us in situations so that despair will be something that we have to overcome. Not that we're going to lose, because we're not going to lose. And even more so, we can be confident of that if our hearts are pure. I'm okay. It doesn't matter. I know things aren't working exactly the way that I would like them, but I also know that I'm where I'm supposed to be. And I said that to you guys the other day. Some of you may have caught it, that I said, I'm not looking for my purpose anymore. I found my purpose. My purpose is to find me. When I begin to find me, all of a sudden the world begins to tick all around me. And I quit looking for all the things that I've been looking that had no part of my purpose. Think about this for a really common sense second, friends. Most of us have spent most of our life looking for something we didn't need in the first place. Wow, that's pretty huge. That's pretty huge. And yeah, you're going to have people that don't act like they should. You're going to have people that call themselves spiritual that don't have the knowledge. They don't have the goods. They don't have the heart. And so maybe they see themselves as being spiritual, but that still doesn't change anything either, because none of those things are supposed to be driving forces for why we act in a manner in which we shouldn't. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter that somebody else doesn't get it. The question is do you? And if you get it, you're going to be successful. That's supposed to be part of all humanity's purpose, is to find out who you are. And so that's kind of been hidden from us. And that she must have a pure heart, a loving heart, and not despair. You understand, the heart is chakra. That is your main motivation chakra. And actually the truth is you actually have two heart chakras that coexist right here next to each other. Maybe that's why he says a pure heart and a loving heart. What if Yeshua was telling you that you have two chakras? We found out last week that he knows about chakras. And you will know love, and that's what he says to her. This was all said with such beautiful emotion. So he just lovingly tells her the keys of the kingdom. He tells her the spiritual truth. Friend, it's okay. Wherever you are and whatever you are, it's okay. Find the purpose in that situation and understand that purpose was predetermined by you before you ever came in this life. And the purpose for predetermining it was because that was something that you needed to work on. And so that's what I mean when I say that you need to catch the purpose. Life is purpose driven. We made decisions before we came into this incarnation that we are in now about what things we needed to do while we were here. And if you'll begin to accept responsibility for that, what you will begin to do is you'll begin to look for what are those things that I have need, what were those things that I made. So it takes you into actually moving into a mental, spiritual state of now seeking spirit instead of trying to get physical. Remember, he said it in this manner for a reason. Those that seek will find. And that's an open-ended statement that can mean anything you make it, unless you understand the mystical aspects of who Yeshua was, and then it's not so open at all. And so, and she will know love, and that's what he says to her. And Dolores says that's very beautiful. What did the little girl do? Abigail says she was just sitting staring at him, and he hugged her and he put her down. I can see that. I've been in that situation 1,000 times. Pastor, pastor, pastor. And the little kids, man, they're so full of love and they're so pure. You know, they used to come in with their parents, and sometimes their parents have scowls and grimaces and agendas and reasons for coming. And here comes this little bitty kid with their arm up, and they just want to love you. You know, how amazing that we're supposed to be like that. And so she says she's just sitting staring at him, and he hugged her and he put her down, and she's smiling. And there's a boy he's going over to who has just one leg. And oh, he is in very bad shape and a big sigh. But Yeshua is going over and he kneels beside the boy. That reminds me of the Aaronic blessing that source kneels before you. In other words, you see the picture of Yeshua living out what the Aaronic blessing was, which simply quoting the Aaronic blessing can bless you, but it won't make you function in that aspect in and of itself. That has to come from inside of you. So he simply goes in a state of humility and he lowers himself to this little child with leprosy. And he goes over and he kneels before him, and he puts his hands on the boy, and his little face is looking up, and the tears are running down his cheeks. She was almost in tears herself as she related this while she was in trance. But the child recognizes something special, I can tell. Friends, how long has it been since you were that to someone? For many of you, that's going to be a hard statement, and please understand, I'm not saying anything outside of love. We are blessed, and we have been blessed to get an opportunity to be where we are. I would not go back for nothing in the world, I promise you. You might decide or be haggling with whether or not you want to go back. If you want to go back, then I guess you have to. But I have no interest to go back. I have more peace and I have more love for myself since we began this journey of truth than I ever had as a Christian. Ever. I see love everywhere. I see the love in the flowers. I've bought more flowers in the last 2 weeks than I probably ever bought in my life. And I walk outside and I see these roses that are already starting to bloom, and I go, wow, my Creator made these things. Look how much He loves us. He makes these things, and we have some Joseph coat roses which are blooming right now, and we have some red roses on the table that have bloomed, and it's just like, wow, all of this beauty was given for us. And so she says he's in very bad shape. There's a boy and he's going over to who has just one leg, and oh, he's in very bad shape. But Jesus is going over and he kneels beside the boy and putting his hands on the boy, and his little face is looking up and the tears are running down his cheeks. She was almost in tears herself. Can you for a second, will you do something with me? Will you do a silly little something called contemplation? Just in your mind, if you will contemplate this, I promise you it won't take you 5 seconds with your eyes closed. But just contemplate what you might experience if you were sitting and you had a leg missing, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you had cancer. It doesn't matter whether you have a bad back. Doesn't matter whether you have some other disease. Doesn't matter whether you have broken heart. But just do yourself a favor, and for just a few seconds, just close your eyes. I close my eyes and I look up as if he actually is bigger than me, and he's kneeling, and yet his head is up here. And just simply close your eyes and take that in and implant that in your mind, what it might be like, the emotions that you would feel. If you felt this energy come and it warms you with such warmth and love and compassion, and you're just looking at it, I can't imagine how the energy that comes out of him would just flush over me. So much so that I would break up into tears, and I would be moved to my very being with the love energy that's coming out of him. And then think about being that. How many of you have stopped for long enough to think about that's your task? See, we're so hung up in Christianity on these signs will follow those that believe. They'll lay their hands on the sick and recover. But all of those things, if you undefine them through Christianity and you define what does it mean to be healed? What does it feel like to someone who is hurting to have someone show compassion to them? What does it feel like when you feel lonely, or you feel scared, or you feel, all out of sorts? And all of those things are manifestations of things. And how do you feel when something makes you feel safe and protected and warm and loved? Of course it would make tears run down your face. And so the child recognizes the thing I shared with you guys that happened to me. I think that was the greatest part of it. When I looked at this gentleman that was eat up with tumors, there was light coming out of him. Friends, this guy didn't want nothing to do with churches. So even then, before I took over and before I ever was a pastor, I saw that we have the power to bring light to people, and our energy affects them. Well, that guy that was sitting in that bed that died 5 days later, I'm telling you right now, friends, he felt the same thing this little boy felt. It didn't heal him. The tumors didn't roll out on the ground like oranges that could be thrown in the trash. He died. But what did it do for him while I, through love and compassion, simply reached out and touched him? And you're going to find out what it does. And so I say these words not to glorify myself, because I would desire that we all learned how to function in this arena. And of course, it's not being taught, so nobody's learning it. And Dolores writes, it was difficult for me to remain objective. It's really hard when you get in the presence of love and compassion. It's really hard to be objective, because it turns us to mush on the inside. And the narrative was so moving. I truly felt that I was actually there in the presence of all of this heartfelt emotion. What a moving story. That across 2,000 years, a past life could move somebody living in this day to feel compassion. Could you see anything this time? I was thinking of that light. And we really need to focus on that light. Let your light so therefore shine so that people may see it. Well, how do we do that? And so Abigail says, I saw the energy light that we are. I seem to always see the light. Maybe not as strongly as I did before. There was something very strong with that older man. But I always see a little glow coming from the hands of the Nazarene whenever he places his hands. This time I saw the glow when he put his hands on the boy's head and his heart and his legs. But I also see the glow, the golden glow, our aura around Yeshua's head, like a little half circle. And some of you may have been in situations where you've seen someone that's anointed and that energy flow is. I have been told that there have been people who have seen that. And you should be the carrier of that, and I should be more of a carrier of that than I have been in the past. But I always see a little glow coming out of the hands of the Nazarene whenever he places his hands. This time I saw the glow when he put his hands on the boy's head and his heart and his legs. But I also see the glow, the golden glow, around Yeshua's head like a little half circle. That's actually, doesn't it surprise you now? I was taught that it was pagan and it's the Catholic Church. Whether you like it or don't, that picture that you see of Yeshua in that little light halo around his head is actually a mystical symbol. He was mystical. He was a true believer. Of course, Christianity calls those things pagan because they don't want you to be those things. But they came in and they destroyed hundreds of thousands of American Indians who were more spiritual than Christianity ever will be. So don't always let that, whoever is the ruling power, convince you that their picture is correct. And Dolores asked her, is that always there? And Abigail says, no, not always. It's there sometimes when he's with someone, or sometimes I will see it when he is looking at me. But it's not always there. Our crown chakra isn't always open, and we aren't always exposing who we are inside. The anointing or the purpose of the moving of the power, when we're in control of ourselves properly, and we're not letting other people control our narrative or our emotions, which is how most of us have lived most of our life. When we're not in that state, then we have the freedom. There will be times you will feel compassion. And I really think that ties to all the times when I've said to you guys that if you'll go look and read most of the scriptures, the mass majority of them will show you some sign or symbol or clearly say it, that he felt compassion and he healed it all. Well, that compassion is the light, friends. That compassion is what you would call in Christianity would be the anointing. In metaphysics, it's simply us exposing ourselves. And so, the light is not always there in any of us. It's always there, but it's not always being exposed. And so Dolores asked again, did anything happen when he put his hands on this little boy? And Abigail says, well, it eased him. It always seems to ease people, but that's what I saw. I saw Yeshua touch him, and he felt something that gave that boy an ease in pain or a relaxing. I felt the Spirit flow through me, and it's always wonderful if you ever get to experience praying for someone and watching a supernatural thing. But I'm going to tell you, you don't have to do any more work to watch a supernatural thing than you do simply to show love and to send love in energy from you to someone else. You do exactly the same thing. And we're going to find out here, I now understand why I've experienced in my journey what I have. And why it doesn't work at will, and why you can't heal people just at your will. Well, I'm going to will to heal this. If I could will to heal people, I would heal everyone. There's none of you that would have back pains, and you'd all be standing up and walking tall, and you wouldn't be hurting, and there wouldn't be shoulder replacements, and there wouldn't be neck surgeries, and there wouldn't be bad joints. We would all be healthy. Why? Because we could just heal it. But that's not how it works in reality. And so it eased him. It always seems to ease people, but that's what I saw. And so Dolores gasped, then a miracle does not always occur each time he does this, or how would you define a miracle? And Abigail says this, I think the fact that the pain is eased and that they are at peace, I would call a miracle. But you don't see these people who are this ill get up and walk and have their bodies grown back together. So you have to ask yourself, if there is truth to our past lives, some of you may not be totally convinced of that. That's okay if you're not totally convinced. But the Bible tells you that Jesus came and he totally reconstructed a human. So you can see the at odds between the narrative of someone who is pulling these things out of, and actually I believe they come out of the Akashic record through the cosmos into your brain and through you. That's how the spirit downloads work. And so she says, but you don't see these things, these people who are this ill get up and walk and have their bodies grown back together. The miracle is the love and how it eases them. So think about that. Think about how instead of you going into a room and being around, maybe you have some family member, maybe you have a mother, maybe you have a grandmother, maybe you have a family member who has some kind of debilitating, stricken disease, and you find it very difficult to go in. How amazing might it be for you if you went and sat with your mother who's on the verge of dying, who's old and her life is worn out and her spirit is still alive and she's about come to the end of the journey of that. How much would it matter if you just spent 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you were in such a place energetically that you could release love out of you to them? I guarantee you, if you ever practice what I'm telling you right now, you will watch people's bodies relax. It's that supernatural that you have the power inside of you, but it all comes off of intent. It all comes out of your heart. And so if your heart's not pure, you're not going to go sit around an old person and send love to them and cause them to be eased. Are you going to take their pain away? I didn't take the guy's pain away. In fact, there was conversation while we were writing after I had prayed with that guy and his whole face glowed. Listen, friends, there's 2 people that were standing in that room with me that will tell you every word I've said to you. There's not a bit of fake in it. They opened their eyes while this was going on because they felt the energy and they looked at him and his face was glowing. They didn't come from him. And so think about how powerful that would be. We go into sick rooms and most of the time it's like, how fast can I get out of here? And how amazing would it be if you actually could go and be a vessel of love and ease someone's pain, even if it was momentary. And so the miracle is the love and how it eases somebody. Some of you need some love. Some of you need some people to come into your presence and show you love, to help you with the ills that you have. And if they are meant to get better, they do. And this is the piece I was talking about. When I prayed for the little girl, I didn't do anything any different than when I prayed for the guy who lit up. The little girl was healed and her brain began to function again, and the guy died 5 days later. I told the people when we left his house and we were headed back to the church for one of my first church services. And I told him, I said, okay, well, here's the thing. We're either going to watch him in a few days walk in that back door back there, and he's going to have a testimony, and what a testimony it's going to be, or he's going to die. They called me 5 days later and said, Brother Turner, what you said is absolutely true. He passed. But it's not anything that we do, except give the love. And I have heard stories of some of these people never get the disease. And sometimes it stops, and they don't know why. But usually it progresses, and all you can do is ease their pain. But what is a healing medicine of easing someone's pain? I know many people, and when they hurt bad, they would give anything at that moment for their pain to be eased. And we can be the vessel of that. Now, there is a thing that goes on, and you notice that all of these people were anticipating what they might receive from the master, from the light giver. And oftentimes people who are sick are not in a place because they're not spiritually trained to receive that power. And so there can be blockages that keep your energy, even if your heart is pure, from affecting them. But there's a million things like that in life that don't work just because we want them to. You know, if somebody's got this massive of negativity, you're probably not going to get them to be real high vibration no matter what you do. You can shandala and dance in the spirit all you want, friend, and that person left the same way they came in. Because there are pieces of it. These little children are prepared. They're ready. They're excited. Here comes the master, and he's coming. And last time he came, he touched me, and I felt wonderful. Did he still have leprosy? Yes, but you don't understand. I felt wonderful. And so the anticipation of that is absolutely powerful. And sometimes it stops, and they don't know why. But usually it progresses, and all you can do is to ease the pain. And of course, we should be vessels of sending love and easing pain. Then it takes different forms in different people. Abigail, yes, and sometimes if his energy is accepted, maybe it's the people that have more faith or more strength in the things they feel coming from him. Maybe these people have an easier time, which is exactly what I was just talking about, that the person, the healer, the master, the light bringer, isn't always the only force. The other force is the receptivity and the spiritual place of the people that the light bringer is interacting with. And so it says, and sometimes if his energy is accepted, maybe it's the people that have more faith or more strength in the things they feel coming from him. Maybe these people will have an easier time. Although he told me, so listen to this, everybody has their time to be returned to the source. Wow. They might just be in this physical body for a while, so it's difficult to know. All of us know at some point it's appointed unto every man once to die, and then the judgment. Has that changed? Not substantially. Maybe the defining of what the judgment will be, the judgment might be now that I'll go to the Akashic Records for a life review while I was here in a human force, and I get to look at all how I made people feel both good and bad, and I also am to take that spirit teaching, and when I come back in again, I want to rectify that. I would prefer that I'm capable of changing that I bring that wisdom in with me. And I go, okay, last time I did this. This time I want to make sure that I make people feel good. I want to make sure that people feel the healing power coming out of me. And of course, if I could know that from the time that I was young, I would have a substantial more people that would give you witness of the healing power. And so it certainly is tied to the position and the state of mind, heart, and spirit of the person that you are encountering. They might just be in this physical body for a while, so it's difficult to know. Dolores states, that makes sense. Does he have any explanation for why people have to suffer in that way? Abigail says, he believes it is part of the progression of the individual. Now that's a huge statement. Oftentimes your pain is part of your progression. It is difficult to explain when you see people in such pain and being eaten away, but he knows that reasons exist for everything and lessons are to be learned. Is anybody listening to this? Folks, there is such an amazing revelation of truth right now, it's not funny. Everything. So nothing happens by accident. Maybe they created this learning in a prior time when they walked here in another form. That is why people in pain or with disease are sometimes allowed to go sooner than others, because the lesson is over with. And I believe that that's absolutely true. When we have learned what we set out with the collective soul, what we learned, and it's funny now because of that band, The Collective Soul, when we accomplished the things that we intended to set out, they were a lot more spiritual. It was pagan punk junk to me as a Christian. And now it's just amazing the messages that exist. And so, when we have fulfilled that, and I would dare say that when we have fulfilled what our purpose was, that we get then to check out. It doesn't have anything to do. Some people go to the end of their life and never find it. And so they check out, they go back, they re-go through all of the praying and planning with the collective soul and making decisions about what they needed to accomplish, probably where they didn't accomplish what they needed to, and then probably what they did accomplish. And then they make a new plan for their next incarnation. And so maybe they created this learning in a prior time when they walked here in another form. That is why people in pain or with disease are sometimes allowed to go sooner. So that's also an act of mercy. There's nothing that will teach us like adversity. There is nothing that will teach you like pain. If you are prone to do something and you start feeling pain when you're doing it, guess what? It don't take you long to learn that lesson. Ooh, I don't want to do that no more. I found that out the older I get. And so Dolores says, does he think that human beings have lived in other forms? And Abigail says, he doesn't say it exactly that way, but he says. So please listen, this is the letters in red. When they have been here before, when they have learned prior lessons, he says it in different ways, but you understand that he believes we visit this land more than once for the learning and for being of service. And that's very beautiful. The purpose thing I'm talking to you about is you are made to come here and to learn something, and you are made to come here and to be of service. It's loving your neighbor as you love yourself. And that we are on God's mission every time we come. So it sounds like our source desires for us to grow. And it is to help us learn and get closer to where we as a people are supposed to be, so that there is no separation. And so Dolores asks, is this the same thing that your religion teaches? Talking about Judaism? Abigail says, no. I have never heard things in my background that I have heard from him. And yet when I hear it from him, it sounds so clear and so right and so familiar. I know he studied in many places with many wise teachers. It's amazing she knows that, but you didn't. Christianity did a good job of hiding the 15 years, 6 of which he was in Kashmir, India, as a guru, meditating every day. And so she's aware that he is studied. They hid that. They cut 12 years of this guy's life out of the picture and totally ignored in the Bible. That should have raised a red flag in every one of us. So he just went from being a 12-year-old boy, he went to here, right? No in between, nothing happened. This is the God man who healed and walked on water, and yet he lived 15 years and there was nothing that happened in there, right? You got to get that's a bogus that's a bogus narrative. And so she's aware that he studied with ancient wisdom teachers, which are called mystics. So he has been made aware of so much more. Dolores asks, yes, so much more than the average rabbi. Abigail says yes. They do not want to hear anything new. So he walks his own path and he teaches his own beliefs. And so Dolores then asks again, maybe this is one of the reasons he doesn't always agree with the temple. And Abigail says yes, and it fills the rabbis with distress and fear that their beliefs will be shaken, that their power and authority would be questioned. And he is able to do this in a way where he doesn't have to be powerful and violent. So I have learned there are many kinds of fear, and you cannot see clearly or feel the truth or the light. You have to peel off each layer of fear. So there is a piece of revelation for each and every one of us. I've given you the picture, metaphorically, that we are an onion, and you must peel the layers off. This was a really beautiful piece that added to that, because the layers that we peel off have, for the most part, are the fears that are binding us from seeing our true light. That's beautiful. And I guess that could take many lifetimes. And so Dolores then says, then I can see that the rabbis would be afraid of him. The average person wouldn't challenge their authority, would they? And Abigail says, no, because you are raised with the teaching that this is the truth. This is the law. And that's exactly what we were raised with. This is the truth and this is the law. And you do not question it or challenge it. And so Dolores says they must think he is a very unusual person to challenge them. Abigail says yes, most of them, not all of them. There are some that are wiser and kinder. They won't speak up for him, but they won't go against him. And so she says, I returned to the scene she was watching. Dolores asked the question, does he do anything else in the house with the children? And Abigail says, oh, he is just visiting with them, and later on they will go out and they will sit with him by the spring, or the ones that might walk with him. And Dolores says, that's very good. Did you do anything else on that day? And Abigail says, oh, I went with the older woman on some of her, unsure of the word, chores, and assisted with bandages and mixing powders. I just helped to clean up and make things comfortable for the people. And so Dolores says, then you didn't stay with Jesus the entire time. There are many other things to be done too. Well, it sounds as if you are doing what you wanted to do. Are you glad you came, or are you sorry? Abigail responds, oh, I am very glad. This is what I am supposed to do. I am very sure of this. I have no desire to do anything else. As I have said, to have stayed in my parents' home and to have married and tried to have a family, I would have disappointed many people. Because if you go against your heart and your intuition, it reaches you eventually. Then you have to face it, and usually everyone suffers. So it's better to be truthful and maybe cause a little pain in the beginning, but to know what your truth is and where you should be is always the best. And Dolores says, I thought that as a young girl who hadn't been out in the world very much, it would be hard for you to see people who are so horribly sick. Abigail says it is hard, because even my imagination never quite made it seem this way. But there is this overpowering sense of being needed and useful. And in the giving as the receiving, this fills me up. I don't need anything else. And Dolores says that's good, because many young girls would want to go home after seeing something like that. Abigail says, no, for me, I want to reach out more. I want to ease them in every way I can. And Dolores says, that's very admirable. And Abigail states, no, I don't know how to explain it. I could not have done anything else in this life. I need this. I need this as much as anyone I might help, because there's nothing else to fill me up. And Dolores says, all right, well, let's move to the days ahead and see if there's anything that happens while you are there in the village that you want to tell me about. An event or something that Jesus does that you want to talk about. Can you find an incident? Abigail says, I see a more pleasant time where we are gathered around the spring. It's a very pleasant day, and he has many of the people of the village outside with him. I see him standing there with his hands raised, and he is talking, and he goes over and gets a little cup of water, and he gives it to one of these women sitting there. She drinks the water, and he lays his hands on her head. He says to her, my sister, the light of God is on you. This energy is flowing through you. You will find strength, and you will release this disease, for you are needed in another capacity. And I see the lady sitting there in a trance, and I feel a cool breeze, and I remember time going by. He sat down across from her, and I see his hands lifted like this, and she raised her hands so the palms were facing outward. I see that glow from his heart and around his head and in his hands in the center of his palms. She opens her eyes, and there is a different, more calm look about her. And she's crying. She takes his hand and she kisses it, and she thanks him, for she knows a change has come over her. She said she heard a voice speak to her, and she knows that her place is to be in the village and to be trained as a physician so she can help heal and comfort those who need her. So her revelation of purpose would never have been encountered had she not been in this place with sickness. How many times have we maybe missed places we should have been because they weren't what we would deem being desirable places? We're not asking ourselves, is this the place that Source wants me to be? We ask ourselves, is this where I want to be? Often. And we often miss the blessings that Source has for us. And so, Dolores then asked her, do you think she has been healed of the disease? Abigail says, I can tell that she appears different to me. There is something visible in the look about her. There is a calm look, a different kind of a glow. There is a change, but I can't really tell. I know that her legs have been affected, but I don't know inside of her how badly she had been affected. So we will see. But this is not the same person. And so Dolores says, I wondered if she had some visible sign of the disease that had changed. Abigail says, it was on her legs. I remember, and she had trouble walking, but I haven't seen her get up or move. She is just sitting in that same place, having kissed his hands, and I am seeing the tears flow, tears of love and joy. But the face, the look is different. Something definitely changed the person. I think sometimes physical changes occur slower. They don't always happen immediately. The immediate thing was the total different look of her, the power, the peaceful look, the glow. And Dolores says, maybe the physical change will happen slowly over a longer period of time. Abigail says, this I have heard happens, and I'm hoping that this will happen for her. Dolores says, then sometimes he doesn't just take the pain away, he works in different ways. Abigail says, yes. He says, everybody has their own purpose, their own plan. And these people need all the strength of one another to carry on. If they can see that within their own village, people can regain themselves and be of help, that is healing in itself for the others. Dolores responds, yes, it is. Then you think he is able to see what their path is? Abigail says, I think sometimes he can, Or sometimes when he touches people, I think he gets clear pictures or clear thoughts. And he knows immediately what they are supposed to do. The clarity comes. So what does that sound like? That's very much like mediumship. Apparently, he could tell that this woman was supposed to do something else. Abigail says, yes, I don't see it always happen that way. Or sometimes things will happen and we will not even hear about them. There's no plan to it. It happens at different times. There's no regular pattern. And Dolores says, after you leave, something could happen too, and you wouldn't even know about it. That's what you mean. All right. Let's move ahead to another incident that happened while you were there. Did anything else interesting happen? And Abigail pauses. Well, that was very special, but yes, I saw him take the bandages and the powders and place them on the face of a man whose cheeks were being eaten away. He did this, and then he kept his hand there and he prayed. And when we came back to check on this man the next day, the change was, and she sighs, it's hard to talk about it because it just doesn't seem real. In awe, it was as if the cheeks had grown back. The disease was still there, but I had never seen the powders work like that when the women used them. It always helps, it always soothes the pain, and especially if it's bad infection, it can make a big difference. But this man was moving his mouth and drinking without any pain, and there was a changed look, like with that lady. And I guess maybe sometimes the Nazarene will know that. Maybe he gets a clear thought or a picture. Maybe he knew that even though this is this man's path, the man had already made much progress spiritually. Maybe somehow with his heart energy connected with the Nazarene, it is so strong that it affects the physical. And this man's face was grown back together, although the disease was still there. But he was like a different person with a different look to him. He was able to move and use his mouth, and he could do this without any pain. So this was a great miracle. They are all miracles. I guess anything can be a miracle. And Dolores says it just doesn't happen the same way every time. Abigail says no. And you are scared? Not really. Maybe that's not the right word. But to talk about having seen something like that almost makes it less real. Sometimes if you keep it to yourself, you know it's safe and it will remain the way you saw it. And Dolores says, because it's so hard to believe. Abigail says, but that was so special. And so Dolores asks, is everyone that he comes in contact with helped, or are there some people who are not helped at all? And Abigail says, I think everybody is eased. Oh, it doesn't always last, but you can see the pain is eased when he visits them and touches them. It is rare when the disease is changed, but they are always at ease, even if it is just for a while. And I wondered if there were some people that weren't helped at all. Abigail says, oh, I think there could be, but I haven't seen that. I have seen him place his hands and talk to these people. It seems to have helped, even if it had been for a short while. And Dolores says, then they are all helped in different degrees. Were you there in the village for 7 days as you expected? Abigail says, yes. We were there for 7 days. And Dolores says, then what did you do after that? Abigail says, we are on a journey to another village. And I wondered if you were returning home. And Abigail says, no. I think this journey this time is going to be for 3 more 7-day periods. He has certain areas he is going to visit. And Dolores says, do you know anything about what you will find in the next place? Abigail says, it is a village where he has many followers, where they ask him to come and lecture and tell his word. Dolores says, is it very far? Abigail says, let me see. This will be 2 days. And so Dolores says, did you hear any of the men's names in the group that you have been with all this time? Abigail says, yes, there is John, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, David. Pause as she thinks. I'm not sure. And so Dolores then asked, now that you have been amongst them, I thought you would have some of their names. You told me what the women did. What were the other men doing during this time? And Abigail says, well, you see, I didn't come in contact with many of these people. I guess some of them helped with repairs and building, and some of them are scribes and teachers. Some of them I really have not I have spent no time with at all, or I haven't even seen. So I think they have specific duties, different ways of helping. Some of them will go off by themselves and pray and study, so I don't see them all the time. And so Dolores says, that makes sense, because there must be many ways of helping in a village where everyone is so sick. Repairs couldn't be made, so the men could help in that way. And if they were teachers, they probably were working in other parts of the village. And so Dolores says, this sounded very practical. The interpretation of the Bible stories of Jesus and his disciples gives the impression that they followed him from place to place, listening and trying to learn from him. To me, this version sounds more like what might have actually taken place. It would be common sense for Jesus to surround himself with people who had many talents, so that they could work with the people they came in contact with in practical ways. After all, they were all living in the real world that is full of hardships. It also shows that Jesus did not expect to perform miracles constantly. He took physicians, men and women, with him to use their healing powders and potions. He did not rely on his powers alone. Our biblical version always painted him as being omnipotent, needing no one. I believe he was much more human than we have ever given him credit for. If he needed no one, then he could have repaired the buildings miraculously also. The disciples and followers did all they could to help and did not sit idly by watching the Master perform his works. And Dolores asked, it sounds as if Jesus surrounds himself with many different kinds of people on his journeys. Abigail says yes, they usually seek him out also. Many of them feel a need to be of service and to give in the capacity that they can do best. So they always seem to be there at the right time, and he ends up with the people he needs. Do you think it's a coincidence? Maybe. If you will continue on this journey, if you haven't already, you will begin to see things, and you will begin to view things. When things don't work out like you want, you will begin to start more and more to learn peace and to allow things and recognize when it's time, those things that you need will manifest. And that's been a difficult lesson, but it's absolutely bearing fruit, and I'm watching it, and everything is not perfect, but everything is perfect. And so Dolores asks, does John have any particular duties? Abigail says, he seems to be very close to Jesus, and he seems to try to be the others' eyes and ears for him. He keeps things connected so people who need to see him get to see him, and to be sure he gets to the gatherings. John organizes many of the activities or meetings. And so Dolores says, you mean he goes ahead of the group and sets these things up? Abigail says sometimes he does that, depending on the type of journey. But once we get to a location, he seems to keep our schedule organized, making sure things get done and bringing to the attention of the Nazarene anything he needs to know. Then he'll know when someone wants to have a meeting or a gathering. This was another practical idea not presented in the Bible. John was similar to a public relations man. Jesus could not just wander from village to village. He needed someone to go ahead, make sure everything was ready, and to check that everything was safe. And so Dolores asked, the village you're going to, where you said there are groups of his other followers, does this village have a name? Or have you ever heard it called anything? And Abigail responds, it sounds like Bar-El. She repeated it, and I said it after her. And you will be there in 2 days. This will be different. There won't be so many sick people there. Well, he started you out by showing you the worst, didn't he? Abigail says yes, which is okay, you know. And Dolores says, maybe the wisdom behind that was if you couldn't take it, he would know right away. We both laughed. It is all right if I come again and speak with you because I enjoy listening to your journey and to your stories, and I want to learn too. Abigail says, so do I. And so Dolores says, I want to learn as many things as I can about this man, so you're helping me also. She says, I then brought Anna back to full consciousness. I left the tape recorder running as she told me some of the things she remembered of the session. Abigail says, I am remembering that the people that don't get well or don't get any better have no anger towards the ones that do. Right now, with the memory still being this clear, I'm getting a very strong feeling about that. And Dolores says there was no resentment. Abigail says no. And for some reason, that thought just came into my head because right now I'm finding it unusual. And Dolores says, well, the whole thing is unusual. Laugh. Abigail says maybe it was enough that any of the people who came in contact with him knew that ease, that sense of being filled up, even if it was just for a short while. And maybe having contacted that feeling gave them enough joy for their fellow man that it did away with any kind of resentment that might have been there. And Dolores says this is showing that everything he did was against human nature. Abigail says, I'm trying to compare this with any other regression we've done. It's the same thing, but this is so much more involved and emotional, I guess I would say. Maybe some of this is staying with me. I guess every regression has taught me a lesson about something. I feel really good about this one because I feel very clear about it. I mean, the man was real to me. And I tell you, when I looked at those eyes, I can still feel that. I was so totally filled. I've never known that feeling before, to be so totally full of contentment and love. There has always been this little empty spot in me, and that was gone. And Dolores says, it's gone now? Abigail responds, well, it's gone when we are working. It's not gone in this life, but there's always been this little empty nagging spot. When I was with him and I looked into his eyes, it was the most complete emotional feeling I have ever had. And although Anna expressed it differently, she was describing essentially the same emotion that Mary felt. Apparently, this was the wonderful effect Jesus had on people. And so Abigail says, when I'm regressed, it's so natural to be there. But then when I'm awake, it would be the last thing I would think of. I'm really feeling very emotional, but it's very cleansing. I mean, I feel so relaxed. And Dolores says, well, you couldn't want for any better feeling. Shalom, complete contentment. So he presents people with shalom. And so Dolores writes, this was an interesting point that was brought out in this session. The fact that Jesus did not heal every person he met. This concept was also presented in Jesus in the Essenes. He was able to ease pain and suffering in the majority of those he came in contact with, but total alleviation of the symptoms and complete restoration from the illness or disability were rare, but they did happen. There were many times when no cure was received, and Naomi made it clear that this was not in Jesus' hands. It was related to the person's karma and destiny in life. Even he could not go against the higher forces that control such things. Wow. How crazy, wonderful, beautiful. I don't know about you, but I never wanted in my life to go to a leprosy colony, but if I could go and see that, I would think I would want to go pretty quickly and see what that must have felt like. Wow. Just the energy. I felt some of those times personally. The guy that I was talking about, both of them that I prayed for that were healed or eased in their own manner. I think now if I look back at it, I went away a fuller more complete person, even if it was for a short season, until I got back around other humans and their negativity sucked it out of me. So I hope you guys have been blessed by this. What an amazing journey it must have been to have gotten to find out that you were there. Certainly, I would love. I wanted to. I knew I'd been birthed at some point in the Civil War. I just knew that. I've known that my whole life. I don't think the Civil War was the first time I came in, but I think that that's the thing that came the clearest. And so maybe at some point I'll have the finances to be able to go back and to go further into this and to find out where I've been and what have I done, what have I been experiencing over the course of the last 10,000 years. So I hope you guys are moved in your spirit. I hope you can feel, I have a real peace. It's like, you know what, we're on the right path, and yeah, I know there's people that won't believe it no matter what is done. But I am so thankful that I am on this path. And I hope you are too. I hope you feel the presence. I hope you that you will continue to endeavor to peel the onion and remove those fears that keep you. Many fears we have in our programming from when we came in. Maybe we even bring some fears from our past lives. So, shalom as you go through the rest of this week. Surely, 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 Source is here. Namaste.